If you're planning to buy, sell, or sort out any paperwork for a vehicle this weekend, you need to know this right now, because the DVLA's core vehicle system goes completely offline in a matter of hours, and it's staying down for the entire weekend. Let's break down exactly what's affected, what still works perfectly fine, and what you genuinely need to do before that window closes. The DVLA has confirmed its vehicle system will be unavailable from 6 o'clock this evening, Friday, right through until 8 o'clock Monday morning. This isn't a rumor or a third-party report, it's a direct notice from the DVLA itself, and it covers a specific but genuinely important slice of what the agency handles day to day. Understanding exactly what falls inside that outage window, and what doesn't, is the difference between a minor inconvenience and a genuinely stressful weekend if you're in the middle of a vehicle transaction. Let's start with what's actually affected, because this is where the real practical impact sits. During this outage, if you call the DVLA's contact center, staff will not be able to issue a replacement V5C, the vehicle registration certificate most people still call the logbook. They also won't be able to check the status of any vehicle application you've already submitted, whether that's a change of keeper, a change of address on the vehicle record, or anything else currently sitting in their processing queue. Contact center staff will still be reachable and able to help with general vehicle-related questions, but the specific systems needed to actually issue documents or check application status simply won't be accessible to them during this window. Here's the part worth understanding properly if you're planning to buy or sell a vehicle this weekend specifically, because it's genuinely the highest risk scenario tied to this outage. Completing a change of keeper is normally something that can be actioned quickly once both parties have the right paperwork in hand. But if anything goes wrong with that process, or if you need DVLA to confirm anything about the transaction while it's ongoing, that support simply isn't available until Monday. If you're planning a private sale or purchase specifically for Saturday or Sunday, it's worth knowing you may need to wait until Monday for full confirmation and support if any complication arises, even though the actual paper handover and notification process itself can still happen over the weekend. Now here's the genuinely good news. Because the outage is considerably narrower than DVLA is down makes it sound, and understanding exactly where the line sits between what's affected and what isn't should genuinely reassure most people reading this rather than adding to any weekend stress. Vehicle online services, specifically taxing your vehicle, declaring a SORN, or making a general vehicle inquiry, will continue working exactly as normal throughout the entire weekend. If your car tax happens to be due for renewal during this exact window, you can still sort it online without any disruption at all. The system genuinely distinguishes between the back-end contact center and application checking functions, which are down, and the day-to-day online transactional services drivers use constantly, which remain fully operational. Driving license services are entirely unaffected too, and it's worth being clear about this because a lot of people understandably lump vehicle and license services together as one system when they're actually run somewhat separately. You can still apply for your first provisional license, renew an existing license, or change the address on your driving license, all exactly as normal, either by phone or online, throughout the entire outage period. If your concern this weekend is anything to do with your own license specifically, rather than a vehicle, none of this affects you at all. It's worth understanding why these outages happen in the first place, because this isn't the first time the DVLA has scheduled something like this, and it almost certainly won't be the last. Essential system upgrades and maintenance genuinely do require systems to go offline entirely, rather than being patched invisibly in the background, particularly for core infrastructure handling tens of millions of vehicle and keeper records. The DVLA processes something in the region of 100 million customer transactions a year, the overwhelming majority through digital channels, and keeping that scale of system running reliably means occasionally taking core services down completely for a concentrated maintenance window, rather than risking a botched update happening live while millions of people are actively using it. Looking at the pattern of similar notices the DVLA has published over recent years, these scheduled outages tend to follow a broadly similar structure each time. A defined start point on a Friday evening, running through the entire weekend, with services restored first thing Monday morning. The agency has also run comparable maintenance windows, specifically affecting driving license checking services in the past, distinct from this particular vehicle system outage, which is worth knowing if you come across older notices online and aren't sure whether they're describing this exact weekend or a previous unrelated maintenance period. Always check the specific dates on any DVLA notice rather than assuming general outage advice applies universally, since the exact systems affected and the exact timing genuinely do vary between different maintenance windows. If you've got something time-sensitive genuinely riding on the vehicle system specifically, here's what's worth doing right now, in whatever time remains before 6 o'clock this evening. If you're expecting a replacement V5C, or waiting on confirmation of an application you've already submitted, calling the contact center now, before the cutoff, at least gets you a status update while the systems are still fully live, rather than discovering over the weekend that nobody can tell you anything until Monday. If you're in the middle of buying or selling a car, and the transaction genuinely needs to complete this weekend, it's worth having a direct conversation with the other party about expectations, specifically that DVLA back-end confirmation and support won't be available if anything about the paperwork needs checking or correcting before Monday. There's a specific piece of advice worth following if you're actively selling a vehicle this weekend, regardless of the outage, because it matters every single time a vehicle changes hands, not just during a system disruption. The moment DVLA is formally notified of a change of keeper, the vehicle becomes untaxed immediately under the new keeper's name, and any remaining full months of tax paid by the seller get refunded automatically. Get the notification of that change wrong, delayed, or unclear during a weekend when back-end confirmation isn't available, and you risk a genuinely awkward gap where nobody's entirely sure whose name the vehicle is actually registered under, which matters considerably for anything from parking tickets to insurance validity in the days immediately following a sale. If you're a car dealer or you regularly handle vehicle paperwork professionally, this outage is worth building into your weekend planning specifically. Any transactions genuinely dependent on immediate DVLA confirmation, rather than simply submitting paperwork that gets processed once the systems back up Monday morning, are better scheduled either before this evening's cutoff or held until Monday once services resume, rather than attempted blind over the weekend itself. It's worth understanding the mechanics of a private vehicle sale a little more closely here, because getting this right matters regardless of whether an outage is happening at all. When you sell a car privately, the V5C logbook has a section specifically for notifying DVLA of the change, and the seller's responsibility is to complete that section and send it off, or notify DVLA online, as close to the actual handover as possible. A common and genuinely costly mistake is either party assuming the other will handle it, the buyer thinking the seller's dealt with the paperwork, the seller assuming the buyer will sort it once they've got the car. If that notification sits in limbo over a weekend when DVLA can't confirm anything's gone through correctly, both parties are left in a slightly uncomfortable position. The seller potentially still technically liable for anything happening with a car they no longer own, and the buyer without confirmed proof the vehicle is now properly registered in their name. There's also a practical insurance angle worth flagging if you're taking possession of a vehicle this specific weekend. Most insurers expect you to notify them of a change of registered keeper promptly, and while that notification to your insurer is entirely separate from the DVLA process itself, sorting your insurance out doesn't need to wait for DVLA confirmation at all. Get your policy updated with the new registered keeper details as soon as you've physically taken possession, regardless of when DVLA's back-end systems happen to catch up, since driving on a policy that doesn't correctly reflect who's actually responsible for the vehicle is a risk worth avoiding entirely, outage or not. So let's bring this together into exactly what you need to do before 6 o'clock this evening, if any of this genuinely applies to you. If you're waiting on a replacement V5C or checking on an existing application, call the DVLA now rather than waiting, since that specific support disappears the moment the outage begins. If you're buying or selling a vehicle this weekend, go ahead with the transaction itself. The paperwork and physical handover aren't blocked, but understand that DVLA won't be able to help confirm or correct anything about it until Monday morning. If your only concern is taxing a vehicle, declaring SORN, or a general vehicle inquiry, you're completely unaffected. Those services keep running normally throughout. And if it's your driving license specifically you're dealing with, none of this outage touches you at all. It's worth being specific about the exact timing one more time before we wrap up, simply because getting this wrong by even a few hours could mean the difference between reaching someone and not. 6 o'clock this evening, Friday, is when the vehicle system goes down. 8 o'clock Monday morning is when it's confirmed to be back. If you've got a call to make or an application to check on, the window between now and 6 o'clock is genuinely all you've got, and it's considerably better used making that call now then discovering at 6:30 that the line's gone quiet on exactly the topic you needed answered. None of this is designed to suggest a scheduled maintenance window is some kind of crisis. It clearly isn't, and the DVLA has been entirely upfront and transparent about exactly what's affected and what isn't, well ahead of the actual outage beginning. But a weekend outage landing right in the middle of what's typically a busy period for private car sales and general vehicle paperwork is exactly the kind of thing that catches people out purely because they didn't know it was happening until they were already trying to call and got no answer. It's worth remembering the broader lesson buried inside this specific weekend's disruption, because it applies well beyond just this one outage. DVLA notices like this one are published directly on gov.uk, typically with a reasonable amount of advance warning, but they rarely make headline news anywhere else, which is exactly why so many people only find out once they're already trying to use a service that's suddenly unavailable. If you regularly handle vehicle transactions, whether professionally or just because you tend to buy and sell cars fairly often, it's worth getting into the habit of checking gov.uk, quote, DVLA news section before any weekend you know you'll need their services, simply because these maintenance windows do recur periodically, and there's rarely any warning beyond the notice itself. If this helped you plan around it properly rather than getting caught out this weekend, hit subscribe, because I'll keep flagging exactly this kind of practical, time-sensitive DVLA and driving information whenever it's genuinely relevant. Scheduled outages like this one aren't dramatic, but they're exactly the kind of thing that's easy to miss entirely until you're the one on hold with nobody able to help. And a 2-minute heads up beforehand is genuinely all it takes to avoid that. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.